Well, welcome, 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 everybody, to Fearlessly Feral Living. I am so happy to be speaking with you today. And today I have a guest, and I'm very excited about this guest. Her name is Julia Mattis. And before I introduce her, I want to read you my normal introduction and welcome again. Yes, you are here with Fearlessly Feral Living, and this is Reverend Karen, and I'm broadcasting to you from the Woogie Ranch out here in rural northern Nevada, where I'm a half an hour away from the nearest gas station and the nearest grocery store. Our mission here at Fearlessly Feral is to provide a strong and unshakable inner foundation that works for long-term successful living. Our purpose is to activate inner self-awareness, and our vision is a world in which everyone lives wild and free. In other words, fearlessly feral. So let me get to my introduction of Miss Julia here. So I met Julia about a year ago. I was going to the Centers for Spiritual Living convention in South Carolina, and she put out a notice that she was willing to give people rides from the airport to the hotel where we were staying. And it was quite a generous offer because it was almost, as I recall, an hour trip from the airport to the resort. So Julia, this person I'd never even met or even heard of before, came and picked me up, and we hit it off instantly, and we became great friends instantly. And we spent most of the convention together. And I soon learned that Julia likes to flit like a social butterfly, even more than I do at these conventions. Of course, we're in South Carolina. It's warm for me. I'm in northern Nevada. I'm enjoying the nice, warm 60 to 70-degree heat. Everybody else is freezing to death. I'm thinking it's warm, and I've parked myself in the midst of the traffic lane on a couch outside in the central plaza in the sun, where people had to walk by me to get to and from the convention area. That way I could see everybody and say hi, but I didn't have to move. Meanwhile, Julie's flitting back and forth. She's flitting here, she's flitting there. She's off talking to this person, she's off talking to that one. And she comes back and checks in with me every so often. And that's kind of been the nature of our relationship since.
Oh, so true, so true.
Yeah. And we are working on many projects together. This woman is very high energy. She is wonderfully detail oriented, and that balances me out quite nicely because if you know me at all, you know I'm not quite so detail oriented. And she's wise and loyal and very, very, very intuitive. So I'm really happy to have her on my podcast. And I have a feeling that this might not be the first visit. So let us know if you enjoy our
Mhm.
discussion today. And if you do, we shall do more of these. So for our discussion today, we're going to talk about the creative process. And this is born out of a discussion that Julia and I had last week, where I informed her that I thought it was my job to break the mold, and which is all part of the creative process. And also, this month's theme from the Global Vision was Centers for Spiritual Living, which is all about the creative process. It's about doing spiritual practices so that we maintain a self awareness so that we can better deal, more successfully deal with life's ups and downs. But it's about staying in the flow and all sorts of good stuff, the creative process. So, my question to you, Miss Julia, I know you have broken the mold in many areas of your life, and I'd like to speak to you about that. How do you break the mold? How do you put the creative process that we so know and love in this teaching called Science of Mind? How do you put that to work in your life?
Mhm. That is a very excellent question. I would have to say, because I'm seeing some things come to fruition in the organization now, and I would have to say that it is a trust and faith that I have that what is what is being shown for me, what is coming up for me, what I'm being guided to do is what is called for in that moment. So I don't know that it's an awareness that I'm breaking the mold as much as it is an awareness of what's being revealed through me and as me is answering my prayer and my intention to be shown what is the highest and best for that moment. And then it's leaning into that idea. And I think more so than anything, what I've seen just in life in general is I tend to be a bit OCD. So just a wee bit, just a wee bit. And so what ends up happening is I have to complete what it is that I give birth to. And for example, I'll give you a for instance. I'm co-writing an article with someone right now, and for the Science of Mind magazine. And one of the things I have to do is when I have an idea, I have to create the whole thing from beginning to end. And I think that's really because 35, 40 years of being an entrepreneur and always having to be responsible for my own outcome, my own output, my own results. And in this work that we're doing together, especially you and I, and with other ministers and in ministerial school, I have really come to learn to collaborate and to love collaboration. I I toiled for so long alone, right? As an entrepreneur, and this idea of collaboration has been hugely inspiring for me. I love working with people now. And so what I have to do is I wrote the whole article and I sent it to him and I called him and I said, look, so here's the thing. Just because I created the whole thing from beginning to end, please don't in any way think that this means that I have written the article. I still want to do this for you. But I wanted to share with you my thoughts because it was an internal expression that needed to come forth. And I understand that perhaps not everybody has fully formed ideas. But again, I think that comes from my entrepreneurial background and being in real estate for so long, is the beginning and the end are very compact and very organized and very structured. And so I think there'll be a part of that that will always be with me. But in this area that I'm moving into now, in the work that we're doing together in spirituality and ministry, is really understanding that breaking the mold is learning to leverage the mold as inspiration, as the foundational beginning of where to start, if
Oh,
that makes sense.
it makes perfect sense. The mold is the foundation, it's the beginning point. It's where we meet people.
Yeah,
And and then we can move into possibilities from there.
I think so. I think that's what it feels like, and I think the more people get to know me and I get better at articulating, the average person would take an email like that and go, well, you wrote the whole article. Like, how are we even going to do this? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I just needed to get it out. Right. So I think there's also that getting to know each other piece, that trust, not just of the process, but of the co-creative process that will then emerge from us together, right, in collaboration with each other. I think that's also breaking the mold because when two or more are gathered, right, as they say in the Bible, there's this inspiration, there's this whole new creation that then is given birth to that could have never ever been because this kind of combination has never existed before.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And if we wouldn't have had that mold as the foundation, we wouldn't be where we're at today,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that I struggle with sometimes. Well, no, I struggle with it. Okay, let me get real here. I know without a doubt that everything that has happened to me in my previous life has happened for my best and highest good. I've always known this. And it has been proven out to me so many times that I would not be where I'm at today if I had not been there first. And yet, sometimes today, I still struggle with it a little bit. This is the part that I struggle with, where sometimes today things sometimes seem so bleak and so hopeless that I despair and I forget. everything that happens is for the best and highest good. And I think that is all part of how we break this mold, because if we can remember that and have faith and trust in that, then we can move in to the what ifs, all the beautiful possibilities that are inherent in the creative process, and say, well, what if we did it this way? What if we tried that? What if it were like this? How could we accomplish what has come up for us in, for example, our visioning process? How can we do that? And then we open ourselves up to possibilities. And I'm working on something now that's going to take breaking the mold. And I set the intention to break the mold. I set the intention that this is what I wanted to do. And then I let it go and I went about my business. And all of a sudden, although it's not all of a sudden because it's been percolating in the slow cooker, all of a sudden, ideas are coming to me as to how this mold can be broken and how we can move into possibilities. And that's the beautiful thing about this creative process. When we get quiet, we do our spiritual practices, we become aware of who and what we really are, our true nature, our divine nature. We become aware of the things that limit us. We change those things. We connect with spirit or God or whatever you want to call it. Today, for me, it's energy. Um, but it changes on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis. And then we can move into that beautiful place of, well, what's possible then? And then the ideas start coming. And so I had an idea this morning, and another person I'm collaborating with had an idea as well. And so we're looking at these possibilities to break the mold. And it's an absolutely wonderful thing. Absolutely wonderful. I love I love where you started with this, with the mold is the foundation. It's where we began. And I love how you proceed from there in almost well, it isn't an almost, it is. It's an intuitive thing with you. Yeah, it's very intuitive. Has there ever been a time in your life when you have not trusted your intuition?
No.
Tell me.
I would say it's interesting. I had a conversation this morning with my one of my advisors, and one of the things that she and I talked about was I learned to adapt it and shape it. So in the business world, a lot of times, if I had an intuitive sense of things, it was channeled, it was funneled. It was adapted, right? I adapted my intuition. And sometimes it became almost a split second. And it's been now where I've had to really back off and really just kind of let it unfold in its much broader magnificence, much like everything else, it's consciousness after all. It's really just opening and I think a greater awareness. And I think for me, the key to that has been, I've never ever been able to articulate it before. In this last 2.5 years has really been a journey of relearning how to talk. Because I'm relearning how to feel. I'm reconnecting with my emotions. And I never, I went years without feeling things. I was so process oriented and so transactional. So I never felt things. And so now not only am I learning to feel things and let feelings flow through me, I'm trying to learn how to talk about what I'm feeling, because I've never had to do that before. I've never had opportunity, chance, and now it's all I do. And I think so. Coming back around, my point here is that trusting oneself, trusting myself, trusting my emotions. I was always afraid of crying in front of people. It was a childhood thing. I was always afraid of expressing anger, because anger was kind of a violent, unpredictable thing in our family. violent is probably a strong word, but it was very strong and unpredictable. So I learned to suppress those emotions. And then I think what happens is you don't trust them when they come up for you and you question them. I questioned them anyway. And so now it's trust. And so trust and faith, again, coming back, those have been the two pillars, I think, of my growth this past couple of years, is trusting myself, trusting my intuition, being able to articulate that trust. And my trust in people has also grown because I never trusted people. So there's been this multi-dimensional, I think, in and through each of those experiences, intuition, intuition, right? And then it becomes intuition. And it just, like, consciousness just is. Like, all of a sudden you're swimming in it. And intuition becomes thinking of someone and picking up the phone and calling them, or having a notion to do something or turn or go here, just like simple things, right? Simple things. Whereas before, in the past, it always felt unidirectional. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Again, you see me struggling to articulate. It always felt unidirectional, and now it feels multidirectional, multidimensional. It is in everything and around me in every way possible, I think. So
Wonderful.
it's interesting. And I thought by letting go of it, I would lose the power of it or the magic of it, right? When really it grows exponentially. It actually, I don't want to say it gets stronger, because that's the thing I'm learning. None of this is big or small or strong or weak. It's just this greater awareness of its magnitude, of its magnificence, of its unboundedness, really.
Yes. Yes. So what's occurring to me is you're explaining how you have grown to trust your intuition and grown to get to the point it's where you recognize that you are in the midst of a creative process pretty much with everything you do,
Mm,
and break the mold. So you've said a lot of things about trusting people, trusting
mhm,
your intuition, trusting and allowing your feelings.
mhm,
And for a lot of my listeners, I know that they don't have that trust.
mhm,
They can't even identify their feelings, much less trust them. Um, some can, some can't. There's a lot of listeners on this podcast who are very new to our teaching. And so I'd like to back it up a bit and say, what would you say to someone new to this teaching who isn't in a place where they can trust anything at all? They don't trust their own feelings. They don't trust their sense of intuition. They don't listen to that still small voice within. They they're not in a very happy, good place. What would you say to these people to be able to develop that sense of trust that you have in people and in your own intuition and in your own feelings?
Wow, good question. All I can do is share with you what my process was. And I was the kind of person that moved at a million miles a minute. And the greatest gift I gave myself, and I can now say that because I didn't say that for a long time, was the gift of sitting in silence. In the beginning, I longed for the ability to sit still for 5 minutes. I wanted just 5 minutes to have a cup of coffee. And as I got into the study, and one of the things that we talk about, but we really don't spend, I think, enough time really explaining, is the word practice. Um, and it was this understanding that it's one thing to, for me, it was one thing to sit and read affirmations and to read Ernest Holmes. And I have read this thing called You 100 times. It's my favorite Ernest Holmes book. It was the first book I got when I first went to my center 10 or 12 years ago. We used to give it out to new people when they walked in the door as a thank you gift. And I'm on my third iteration of it already. I've highlighted it, I've spilled coffee on it, I've torn pages out. I mean, it's crazy. For me, the biggest turning point in my life to trust was learning to sit and just be still. And it started with 5 or 10 minutes. And it started then, with 30 minutes. And I won't get up now. Sometimes I sit, I think I told you on Christmas Day, I sat for 7 hours. And so what of sitting? Well, sitting is listening, and it was a multidimensional experience of listening to my own chatter in the beginning, listening to learning to listen to the silence and be in the silence. And then it was really learning to open myself up to the voice of God. And my experience of that was I was afraid to let the feelings come and go. And it was hard in the beginning because it's scary. It's the thing we all fear the most, is to actually sit and allow ourselves to feel the feelings, because I was always afraid that they would swallow me up, or they would drown me, or they would overcome me, and I couldn't control, I wouldn't be able to control myself. And I think that's the other thing too, as human beings, we're afraid of the loss of control.
Mm.
And the biggest fear, of course, is the loss of self-control. And I will tell you, it also took prayer partners and mentors, having people to pick the phone and call and say, this is a really horrible experience I'm having right now. And people saying to me, it's okay. What you're going through is normal. What you're experiencing is normal. And there was a lot of that because, again, as an entrepreneur, I always felt like I had to do things alone. And it was a lot for me to reach out in the beginning to people and to say, hey, I'm having a tough time. I'm having a bad day. I'm having and you and I've talked about this. You've had the mental equivalent in the experience of 12 steps, but those of us who I was never experienced or exposed to that. Um, so it wasn't something I learned about until I was in my 50s. And then I didn't know how to use it. Like, I didn't know how to call people. For me, it felt like weakness. It felt like self-betrayal in some cases. It felt like I wasn't good enough. I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't figure this out. Blah, 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 right? Like all these stories we tell ourselves. And yet it was paramount to getting to faith and trust and having the deep love and support of someone in your life, anyone, whether it's a practitioner, whether it's a minister, whether it's a friend. Because I think deep down inside, that's the thing we're all the most afraid of, is that we are not lovable, that we're not enough. And to expose who we are and share who we are in a very vulnerable way, and just have someone listen and hold that space, was just, there's no words for that. And I think what I would say to someone who is new in this teaching is to start with a practice, to create a doorway, to create an opening in your heart and your mind and your soul, to allow yourself to listen and be open and present for the voice of God. And you have to get through a lot of stuff. There's no doubt. We've got our whole lives of programming, of being programmed, family, stories, social, whatever it is. It's a lot to cut through. But in the end, it's so worth it. Because in trusting ourselves and learning to trust ourselves, that's where we begin, again, breaking the mold. I don't see it as breaking the mold. I see it as getting to myself and really beginning to embody and understand who and whose I am. Right. And, we are so unbelievably loved. We are so unbelievably adored, just as we are, just our very existence on the planet. Really. I think that was the biggest shift for me, was just learning to sit. And I tell people this all the time. I'm a cliche girl, but I mean, it's very true. It is gradual, it is sequential, but it is accumulative. So, sit 5 minutes a day, sit 10 minutes a day, sit 15 minutes a day, create the habit and the pattern, then the discipline to
Mm.
sit and just allow yourself to be open and to receive. And of course, I took your class, which, I'll give a plug for your class. One of the mantras that we developed in that class was, and I still say it every morning, is I surrender to the presence and power of God within me. I surrender to the power and presence of God within me. And then the second one, which I developed on my own, is I open my heart to give and receive love. I open my heart to give and receive love. And these are kind of my morning mantras. If I do nothing else, besides God is, I am, God is, I am. If I do nothing else, I say those mantras. But I've gotten to the point where if my day starts early, like it did today at 10 o'clock, or it did the other day at 9 o'clock, I will get up a little earlier just to, I'm committed to my practice. I'm committed to that now. It is essential to where I'm at. And I always need that. I want that to always be the third rail in my life.
Yes. Well, heard it here first, folks. Actually, you probably didn't. You'll hear it a lot in this teaching. Start with a spiritual practice. That's where you can start. And like Julia said, it is cumulative. It does pile up. And one day you'll find yourself grateful that you had the gentle discipline to do that spiritual practice every single day, to just sit no matter what. And then go with it when the next step comes up. What do you do after sitting? And the next spiritual practice after that. And go with it and allow it. And love ourselves. Um, Lately, my mantra has been love it all. And that has opened up in me some wonderful shifts in my own consciousness that have been really incredible. More about loving myself, actually, than anything else. But in doing that, I've also become more effective in my work in the world. And no, I didn't have any clue, no hit, no inkling of an idea that just by saying and chanting and intending and setting the intention for and being in that consciousness of loving it all, could things like open up for me the way that they have. So you never know what will open up for you, but I can promise you this: what opens up is always fantastic.
Mm.
Always fantastic. So believe
Mm.
it or not, Julia, we've just spent a little over 20 minutes here talking about this.
Wow.
And I want to know if you have any closing remarks before I say goodbye here.
Well, no, I just want to say thank you for this. I mean, you and I always have these deep and rich and empowering conversations about consciousness and God, and I so appreciate it and thank you for the invitation today. And I think if I would just have anything to say to the people that might be listening, anyone who might be contemplating their next move, is give one of us a call. I mean, this is not something you ever have to try to figure out alone, and
Yeah.
nor should you, because if I wouldn't be here if somebody hadn't shown me the way. I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here if someone hadn't shown you the way. I mean, let's face it, human being, the existence on the planet is predicated on us being in relationship with each other. And I think that's where the oneness comes from, but it also is this understanding that it, somebody else has walked our path before, and somebody else has made the commitment to themselves that they will be your guide. And that's a fact. That's a truth. I've not found that to not be true. In fact, I've been blessed by many guides. Several other mentors and ministers and people that I've had in my life. If you add, again, the intention, I set the intention to ask for the guide, to ask for the help, to ask for the way to be shown, for the path to be highlighted in front of me, and people like you showed up. And so I think that's the one thing that I would say is I encourage you, no matter what you are, where you are in your spiritual path, reach out to somebody, whether it's a minister, a practitioner, Rev Karen, myself, a therapist even. Like there's nothing wrong. These people are all there to help. And that's what I would say, I think.
Thank you.
Be strong, have courage, and reach out.
Be strong, have courage, and reach out. Wonderful. That's a wonderful conclusion to our conversation today. Julie, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
As usual, our conversations have been, this conversation has been awesome. And for all of you out there listening, I want to thank you also for listening and being here today and for your support. And remind you that Fearlessly Feral Living is a focused ministry of Centers for Spiritual Living, meaning that any financial support you give us is fully and completely tax deductible. And there's several ways that you can support. You can support the podcast, and the link will be in the show notes. You can donate at our PayPal page, and you can go to our website at fearlesslyferal.org. And all of those links and more are on the website. So thank you once again. And I am knowing Fearlessly Feral Living for you and for me.